Should be a triumphant day for the president. Sweet victory on what he's been calling a big, beautiful tax cut. He's delivering on it. Breaking late today, a key swing vote in Republican Bob Corker, who has basically been feuding with the president, announced he's a no on the tax cut because he's concerned about debt piling up. But in the end, his opposition is not going to matter much because other wavering Republicans like John McCain and Susan Collins came on board, giving Mitch McConnell a much-needed victory after that colossal failure on repealing and replacing Obamacare. In fact, right now, live on the Senate floor, we've seen Mitch McConnell emerge. He's walking around right now. They're still counting the votes, but McConnell has indicated that they have at least 50. Then Vice President Mike Pence would be the tie-breaking vote to push forward on tax cuts. Then it heads to a conference committee to work out differences with the House version of this bill. But the bottom line tonight, Kimberly, is whether the vote happens tonight or there's a possibility it will slide into tomorrow, a rare Saturday session for the Senate. Tax cuts in the United States Senate are moving forward, something the president promised and is now delivering on. Kimberly?
All right, Ed, thank you so much. Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Also tonight, the Department of Justice has filed an arrest warrant for Jose Garcia Zarate, the illegal immigrant who was being tried for the 2015 shooting death of Kate Steinle. Zarate, who had been previously deported 5 times, was accused of shooting Steinle with a stolen weapon, then subsequently dumping the gun in the bay and fleeing the scene of the crime. According to U.S. immigration officials, the federal government plans to immediately deport Zarate as soon as he is released from custody. This comes after a jury found Jose Garcia Zarate not guilty of murder, involuntary manslaughter, and assault with a deadly weapon. Zarate was only convicted of being a felon in possession of a firearm, a charge that could result in time served. Following the verdict, President Trump issued a series of tweets, quote, "A disgraceful verdict in the Kate Steinle case. No wonder the people of our country are so angry with illegal immigration. The Kate Steinle killer came back and back over the weakly protected Obama border, always committing crimes and being violent, and yet this info was not used in court. His exoneration is a complete travesty of justice. Build the wall." The jury was not told the killer of Kate was a 7-time felon. The Schumer-Pelosi Democrats are so weak on crime that they will pay a big price in the 2018 and 2020 elections. Just moments ago, on Tucker Carlson tonight, Attorney General Jeff Sessions also weighed in. Watch this.
It's time for this country to get its head on straight. These cities should not be protecting criminal aliens, people who come into the country unlawfully, then they commit another crime, and then they hide that individual and don't let them, as they did with Zapata, be turned over to the ICE officers so they can be properly deported.
So the killer, and he is the killer, is now being deported?
That will be his ultimate fate. We are confident, and we are going to do everything possible to ensure that happens, although there are some potential other charges that could be brought against him. And before being deported and released, we think he should face every charge that is proper to be brought against him. And you can be sure our Department of Justice is working right now to bring any charges that are appropriate.
All right, fantastic. All right, joining us now is Fox News contributor Charlie Hurt, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, and Fox News contributor David Webb. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, gentlemen.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Greg, I'm going to begin with you. Earlier today, you wrote an op-ed for FoxNews.com titled "The Steinle Verdict is Only the Latest Miscarriage of Justice in San Francisco." What do you mean by that?
If you look at the history of what juries have done in San Francisco, it goes all the way back to when I was a law student, and 2 blocks away, as I was sitting in class, the mayor of San Francisco and a board of supervisor were gunned down by a guy by the name of Dan White. His lawyers concocted the most preposterous defense I've ever heard of, the so-called Twinkie defense. A diet of junk food led him to be aggressive and violent. The jury swallowed it hook, line, and sinker, and they acquitted him of murder. He was convicted of manslaughter, only did 5 years, and was set free. I mean, there has been a consistent pattern in San Francisco of liberal juries letting people go, notwithstanding the law and the facts.
Unbelievable. You know, that case brings back, just frightening memories. And then working as a prosecutor in San Francisco, you could see the juries do some unbelievable things. I didn't even expect, David, that they would do what they did here with this Kate Steinle verdict. It was really shocking.
Well, sadly, I think you could have predicted this based on what Greg said. There's a history of this. And it's also a problem in liberal policies, in something that has turned our correction system from punitive into one that is based on excuses. It was your bad upbringing. It was the Twinkie defense. It was something else that caused you to do this. It was someone else that picked up the gun. It was someone else that did this. The fact is they excused the behavior. And look, my heart breaks for this family. A father and a daughter walking along, taking a selfie to wind up dead because someone who should not have been in this country, no matter what, was on the street in a city that protected him. These aren't sanctuary cities. These are refuge cities. They are refuge cities, and we're in a budget time right now. And the one thing the Trump administration should do is tie conditions to the budgets, to these cities, to the federal monies. And if they don't comply by next Friday, the 8th, when they have to get this through, they should make sure that they keep the money from them if they don't comply with federal law.
All right, Charles, so obviously the president very upset. You see some strong words with a decisive, specific action delineated by our Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. This is such, I think, a miscarriage of justice. And I think Sean Hannity was correct when he said last night, these sanctuary cities, they have blood on their hands.
Oh, absolutely. It's a total travesty of justice. And then to add insult to injury, we saw that lawyer for this thug, this bum, come out afterwards and instantly try to politicize all of it. And he talked about how Donald Trump needed to respect the jury decision because he's under investigation or some nonsense like that. It was absolutely insulting. But if he wants to politicize it, okay, let's have a political fight about this. And that's what we had in the last election. And Donald Trump won. And the reason that he won is because this is not a 50-50, 55-45 issue. This is like an 80-20 issue. Americans are so sick and tired of this kind of crap out of Washington, out of the federal government failing to do its most basic, essential job, that this is a great issue for Republicans if they want to. And if Democrats want to defend sanctuary cities, defend people like this, defend lawless people from just pouring over the border, committing acts like this, and then getting protected, then fine. Let's have that fight. And you know what? Republicans will win in the next election, and then Donald Trump will win re-election. I'm fine with that. Let's have that. Let's continue to have this political debate if they want to.
Kimberly, there's a point to be made here, and I want Americans to pay very close attention to this. Liberals and liberal progressives are willing to sacrifice American lives for their political goals. Pay close attention to what they do. They sacrifice each other, they sacrifice American lives, and their ideology is dangerous to everyone out there.
What's inexplicable is the Department of Justice, the feds, never prosecute under the laws. 21 years ago, Congress passed a law that said it's illegal not to cooperate with ICE, and yet you have 300 sanctuary cities and counties, San Francisco included, who abuse that law. They ignore that law. And there's another law that says if you harbor or shield somebody who's here illegally, that's a crime, 5 years behind bars. And if somebody dies, like Kate Steinle, as a result of what the city and county did in San Francisco, it's life behind bars. The sheriff who let that man walk out of the jail and kill Kate Steinle should have been prosecuted and should be doing life behind bars. But the feds won't touch it. Jeff Sessions needs to get off his duff.
Okay, well, let's see. Definitely a call to arms for Jeff Sessions to do something about this. And also, obviously, would be in keeping with what the president wants to do. Greg, I'm going to double back with you because California Governor Jerry Brown recently signed a bill designating Moonbeam, remember? California, a sanctuary state.
Right.
Talk to us about that.
Well, oddly enough, as restrictive and abusive and illegal as that is, because under the Supremacy Clause, the federal government has the final say and province over matters of immigration, Jerry Brown is thumbing his nose at the law, but San Francisco's is even more restrictive than the state sanctuary policy, and both ought to be prosecuted by the feds.
You know, there's a serious and significant, loss of life, and you hear the stories in the news, and you meet the mothers and the fathers and the family members who have suffered at the hands of crimes committed by illegal immigrants who come into this country, revolving door, exhibiting recidivism, repeated crimes, career criminals, and yet it seems like nothing's done about it, David.
No, nothing's done about it. And I want to add another context to this liberal policy of open borders, not doing anything about immigration. They're in effect creating an underclass in America. When you look at the numbers put out there of illegal aliens, and they are illegal aliens under 18 U.S. code, not undocumented immigrants, and you look at the education levels, when they come in with low education levels or no education levels, don't even meet high school graduation at a minimum in America, that means that we are creating a segment of this society that is incapable of participating in this society effectively. We're importing poverty, no matter where they come from, whether it's El Salvador, Estonia, Eastern Europe, Asia, or wherever. We are importing poverty, and that is an economically inviable way to go through and have a society be successful. These liberal policies will bring this country down, and when we become the country that no one wants to come to because of these policies, where do their liberal ideologies go?
Yeah, well, Charles, is it going to take that long? I mean, you talk about the elections coming up and that the liberals and the Democrats are going to pay for these policies that ultimately can result in loss of life, like we saw with Kate Steinle gunned down. But there is a reckoning coming in 2018 and in 2020.
I think there is. But also, let's remember how all of this insanity began in the first place. It began because Democrats couldn't win any fights based on the ideas that they were trying to propose. All of their issues, they couldn't win any of them. And so the only way to do it was to not change their ideas, but to change the electorate. And that's why they went to this open borders policy and this idea of bringing in all of the, as David says, all of these impoverished people that don't necessarily have any skills or anything, but just throw the borders open and then basically treat them as indentured voters so that they could win a high office again. And that's what they've done. And I'm sad to say it's worked brilliantly. They've succeeded beyond, I'm sure, their wildest imaginations. And they made up the differences for Barack Obama both times, and probably made the difference in both of Bill Clinton's elections. And it's really sinister, but it's true. And not until Americans take back their country and fix all of these problems will this mess subside.
And yet the people of San Francisco, Kimberly, seem to go along with all of this. We saw that last night with the jury. I mean, this was a clear case of felony murder. California law says, and you know this, California lawyer, if you fire a weapon into an area where people are and somebody dies, that's felony murder. At the very least, it was manslaughter, which is the reckless handling of gun. Even if you buy his argument that it was accidental, that's manslaughter.
It's outrageous because it was obviously a total conscious disregard for a human life, behaving in this way, acting with essentially implied malice, conscious disregard of a known risk likely to result in great bodily injury or death. Yeah, but I saw this with San Francisco jury, sadly, and I prosecuted a case in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and it's unbelievable because you can sit there and charge the jury and read the jury instructions, and they have a whole different political bent in terms of how they want to see things come out, and they're thinking more about outcome than following the law.
If you want to commit a heinous crime, as I said in my column, San Francisco is the place for you.
Right.
You'll get away with it.
My question to you is this: what would that jury have done if the roles had been flipped and it was a legal American who had shot and killed an illegal, and then this kind of verdict came out?
There would be fires on the Embarcadero. There would
Fisherman's Wharf.
Fisherman's Wharf would be in flames right now. But this is the hypocrisy of liberal ideology. It ignores facts. It ignores the rule of law. It ignores the realities of life. And again, they're willing to sacrifice anything to achieve their goal. That is contrary to what we do in America.
Yeah, and Greg, real quick, and that's why so many people have asked, can President Trump actually force sanctuary cities to comply with federal law?
He can. He can do it with, sort of carrot and stick. He can.
Heavy with the stick.
He can take, the stick would be prosecute these people like the sheriff. But the carrot is really just take the money away from them. There's only one way you can get through to politicians: take their federal government funds away from them. And he has the authority under federal law. Department of Justice has issued an opinion on this and says you can withhold money. They need to start doing it aggressively.
And they have 1 week till next week. We have this shutdown, showdown battle that's underway. Well, Congress has a responsibility here. They can tie this. They can work with the administration. By next Friday, these could be put in place. The restrictions can be there. Take their money. It's the only place other than their votes that they care about.
Yeah, you gotta lift the funds, lift the wallet, and then they'll pay attention and hopefully comply. We'll see. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And coming up, last night, Sean blamed sanctuary cities for the death of Kate Steinle. Was he right? Also, we'll be joined by two mothers whose children have been killed by illegal immigrants, and we're going to get their reaction to last night's painful verdict as this special edition of Hannity continues. Gone. This is a Fox News alert. We're closely monitoring the Senate floor as a tax reform vote is looming. Now, Vice President Mike Pence is headed to Capitol Hill to oversee the vote, and we're going to bring you more information as we have it. On last night's program, sounded off on sanctuary cities. Watch this.
Kate Steinle, killed back in July of 2015, walking arm in arm with her father on a pier in San Francisco, shot and killed by an illegal immigrant, Jose Garcia Zarate. This man had 7 prior felony convictions, 4 involving narcotics. This was his facing of his 6th deportation. At the time he shot and killed this innocent woman. Sanctuary cities tonight, those that support them, they are to blame for the death of Kate Steinle.
Joining us now are two mothers whose sons have been killed at the hands of illegals. Here with us is Marianne Mendoza. Her son, Police Sergeant Brandon Mendoza, was killed during a head-on collision with an illegal immigrant who was recklessly driving on the wrong side of the road back in 2014. And also with us is Agnes Gibney. Her son, Ron Da Silva, was shot and killed by an illegal gang member while he was standing in a driveway back in 2002. Women, as a mother, I feel for you for the loss of life, a senseless loss of life. And I know this is very difficult. We do appreciate you being here with us tonight. And Marianne, I want to start with you, with your reaction to this stunning verdict. How do you think Kate's parents are coping with this right now?
I can't imagine the heartbreak and the failure that they're feeling that this justice system in the United States has dealt them. And, you know, these crimes start at our border. Look at Brian Terry, the Border Patrol agent who was killed, and countless other Border Patrol agents who were killed. It spreads throughout our country, and it's happening to hundreds of thousands of Americans. This isn't just, as awful as it is, this isn't just about Kate Steinle. There are your neighbors and your family and your friends are being affected by illegal alien crime in this country. And we've started, as much as the liberals don't like to hear this, we've started Advocates for Victims of Illegal Alien Crime, which is avac.us, to bring awareness to the American people. And I'm challenging Mitch McConnell to bring Kate's Law and No Sanctuary for Criminals Act to the Senate floor and get those two things passed prior to any discussions about DACA, because both of those bills deal with illegal alien felons, over 500,000 of them in our country, awaiting deportation. This insanity has got to stop.
It's really true, and I can agree with you so much. You know, being a former prosecutor and working in San Francisco and the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, in California having such a large population of illegal immigrants that come in and reoffend all the time. Agnes, do you agree with Sean? Do you think that sanctuary cities killed Kate Steinle?
Absolutely. And oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Agnes.
Yes. Yes, I do. It's a direct result of our inept government, the corrupt government, the liberals in the state of California that allowed this to happen. They sent a very clear message yesterday, the governor of California, Jerry Brown, the judicial system, the mayors, and the sheriff's department, that they're going to be protecting the criminals and not us American citizens. It's a disgrace.
You know, the problem here that we see, Marianne, is when you see, like, you know, repeated deportations, like in the case of Zarate, who murdered Kate Steinle, coming in and out, back and forth, a revolving door, and a system that is broken that allows this person to come back in and reoffend and kill.
That's not the only person, and this is what the American people need to understand. There's offenders who are coming over our border 20 and 25 times, 18 times, coming back over, raping innocent children. There's a rape epidemic going on in South Carolina. There are so many crimes that are committed by people who are deported and walk right back over our border. And Americans are kidding themselves that they don't think that we need a wall and we need a secure border in our country. It's the only way that it's going to stop this repeat offense.
Agnes, why do you think, why should law-abiding Americans tolerate any kind of crime from illegal immigrants? And that's basically what the President of the United States is saying. Why should we tolerate it? Why should the taxpayers, why should the mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers who have suffered unspeakable loss tolerate this type of behavior?
We shouldn't. American citizens should not be tolerating this, and they ought to be calling the congressmen and demanding this nonsense to stop. How many lives is one too many? How many lives more are we going to lose? What message did San Francisco send to the rest of the country that you can come to California, you can kill, and you walk free? This is insanity. This needs to stop. I was heartbroken and furious with the system. I'm a legal immigrant myself. We follow the law. Mm-hmm. And for the first time, I was disappointed with my country.
Oh, my goodness. You can only imagine, right? I mean, you are both so brave, such wonderful, beautiful women, to come here and to share this with the people out there, the real life, the suffering and disappointment that you have, you know, in your hearts. I can only imagine when you go to bed at night how much you must, you know, miss your boys. Marianne and Agnes, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And joining us now with more reaction to the shocking verdict in the murder trial of Kate Steinle is America First Action spokesman and senior advisor, former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark. Always a pleasure to have you with us. And you must be just so disappointed with what happened here in San Francisco. I know I'm disappointed and disgusted, having been a prosecutor and been First Lady of that city, to see this kind of outrageous miscarriage of justice. Will anything happen to change with this verdict that happened in the debate in this country on sanctuary cities?
Not likely, not as long as Congress continues to kick the can down the road on illegal immigration and immigration reform in this country. Look, both sides have been using this thing as a political football, looking for political leverage. There's basically no will on the United States Congress to fix our broken immigration system. The only elected official in Washington, D.C., who understands that this is a crisis and has a sense of urgency about it is President Donald Trump, who campaigned on it. Look, this whole thing is ass backwards. You know, I'd sit there, I listen to the mothers. Kate Steinle's family still can find no peace. And now I hear that ICE says they're going to deport this guy. It's too late. Here's what my problem is with them deporting the guy now. I like Jeff Sessions' idea, charge him federally, maybe rack up 10, 15, 20 years where he can sit in a prison, because if they deport him right now, he will be right back in the country because our border is not sealed. For heaven's sakes, seal the damn border.
Yeah, seal the border, build the wall, follow the law. These are the problems that we're having, and California is really just a pitiful example of how bad this problem has gotten. And we were speaking earlier in the program about elections coming up. We heard from Jeff Sessions earlier on Tucker's program. Sean saying sanctuary cities to blame for the death of Kate Steinle. But now we have a president with the will and wherewithal, and I'm sure you've had conversations with him, Sheriff, about this issue.
Precisely, and push is going to have to come to shove for the United States Department of Justice. Look, there are federal laws that are being violated by sanctuary cities, catch and release policies. And the Justice Department is going to have to develop the teeth put some teeth into their rhetoric and charge these officials, charge these mayors, charge these law enforcement officials that are going to defy federal law. Sanctuary cities are illegal, we know it, and all we see is the back and forth, the threatening of pulling funding, and then you get some activist judge who gets in the way, and he delays that and says that they cannot do it because Congress has already approved the funding, but they didn't do that when President Obama threatened to pull funding from schools from not having allowing men to use women's bathrooms. So at some point, the Justice Department, Jeff Sessions, is going to have to charge one of these individuals. Forget about the funding stuff, all right? Charge one of them criminally. One of these statutes can end up in a person upon conviction serving 10 years in a federal prison. Some public official is going to have to be charged and prosecuted to get the attention of everybody else. But until then, the Congress, as I said, they don't have the will, Kimberly. They do not have the will to fix this broken immigration system because both sides are using it for political leverage.
No, you're absolutely right. And Greg Jarrett was on earlier. He, concurs, feels the same way as an attorney that, the law is there. And somebody's going to need to be prosecuted and be held accountable to actually stop the flow of blood coming from these criminal recidivists who keep coming in, are deported, come back in again, commit more crimes, and no one seems to matter. It's almost like you got to give these people an apology. Oh, I'm sorry, we have to prosecute you, or we can't let you come back in and forth to commit more crimes against innocent, law-abiding people. I mean, when you look at this picture of what happened here and you see this guy, honestly, I cannot believe that San Francisco did this. As bad as some of the things they've done in the past, how did this guy, a felon in possession of a gun, not be convicted of anything? I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, the thing that's most disgusting to me is that this illegal alien had more rights than Kate Steinle and Kate Steinle's family.
He's going to get credit time served or something.
That's the thing that chaps my rear end. It really does. That an illegal alien has more rights than a United States citizen. But again, look, Congress, all they do is pay lip service. Now there's this funding for the wall that's tied up in, they hide it in other bills.
Right.
And then Chuck Schumer comes along and threatens to shut down the government if that's included in a bill. And then the GOP backs off. Look, it is high time in this country. The American people have spoken. They spoke last November and they continue to speak. They want this illegal immigration crisis fixed. They want it solved. We are a sovereign nation, and if you're going to be a sovereign nation, you have to have borders, and you have to protect those borders. That's what we expect our federal officials to do.
Isn't that the bare minimum we can do in terms of a basic decency, a basic expectation of public safety, that we can protect people, an innocent girl and her father walking down the street to not be slaughtered?
Well, you've seen some of the victims there. Some law enforcement officers have been killed by people illegally in the country. Other citizens, have been victimized as well. And when the United States federal government cannot protect its citizens from an illegal invasion, and that's what they is. They're allowing people to come into the country illegally and set up residency. And then when they kick them out, they come back over, they kick them out, they continue to come back over. This is a cat and mouse game by these illegal aliens. They know it. They know that there's little that will happen to them, especially if they hide out in a sanctuary city where they're provided a safe haven.
Unbelievable. It's really outrageous, and it seems to be getting worse, but I have faith that the president is going to do something about it, and we're waiting on Jeff Sessions to do it as well. Sheriff Clark, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And we have much more on the special edition of Hannity. Up next, we'll tell you where things stand with the accused sexual harassers, Senator Al Franken and Congressman John Conyers, and whether they will resign or not. Stay with us.
This is a Fox News alert. Senate Republican leaders say they are on the very brink of passing a major tax reform bill. Fox Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry has been following it from the beginning and joins us with the latest developments. Ed, what's up?
Tucker, great to see you. The Mike Flynn guilty plea overshadowed a bit what is a huge day for the president. He's on the verge of a dramatic victory, delivering on that big, beautiful tax cut he's been promising. Breaking late today, Republican Bob Corker, who, like John McCain, has been basically feuding with the president, announced he's voting no on the tax cut because of concerns it will add too much to the national debt. But in the end, his opposition might not matter much because other Republicans on the fence, like McCain, Susan Collins, came on board, giving Mitch McConnell what is expected to be a much-needed victory after that big failure on repealing and replacing Obamacare. The president has already been touting a stock market that has been on fire until today's news about Flynn. The Dow yesterday seeing its 63rd record close this year, and it could be roaring again after some of these changes. On the corporate side, you'll see the corporate tax rate dropping from 35% down to about 20%. They're expanding write-offs allowed for companies that are buying new equipment. And on the personal side, despite Democratic claims that this helps very few people, the Joint Committee on Taxation says 60% of U.S. households will get a tax cut. 8% will pay more. And despite all the charges, this will only help the rich. That same committee found that for families making between $50,000 to $75,000 per year, 80% get a tax cut of $100 or more. Now, a lot of last-minute changes to get enough Republicans on board. Democrats furious that literally some of these changes are being handwritten into the text of the bill, so they're still working it out. The vote they were hoping to have tonight in the Senate may be sliding until tomorrow, a rare Saturday session. But the bottom line is Mitch McConnell has suggested they have the votes to give the president the victory on this, Tucker.
Ed Henry, thanks for that.
Good to see you.
One notable part of this tax plan is that it will eliminate the tax deduction that currently exists for interests on student loans. Sal Mastro was the national youth spokesman for the Trump campaign. He says deleting this deduction could be devastating to an entire generation. He joins us to explain. So, Sal, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I don't think most people are aware of this. So give us an explanation of what this is.
So I wasn't aware of it till a couple of days ago, and I was all for this tax bill. And let me preface this by saying I support the president 100%. I always have, always will. I think he's done a great job so far, and I think this tax bill hits a bunch of high notes that will bring a lot of wealth, jobs, and innovation back to the country. But when looking at bringing all that innovation back and looking at the next great American workforce, we have to look at millennials who have been devastated by the Great Recession and by Obama's weak, anemic recovery. And so having these student loan interest deductions helps them a lot. So right now, about 25% of student loan borrowers are currently in default, deferment, or forbearance. That's over $300 billion of the $1.4 trillion in outstanding student loan debt. Now, right now, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Department of the Treasury, and the Federal Reserve have all warned in statements and testimony that the current student loan debt in this country at $1.4 trillion is as dangerous to the economy as the housing bubble was in 2007.
I think that's right. Yes.
Yep. And so we desperately need to keep this in there, and I urge House Republicans and the president to make sure that this is in there before it gets back, because not only will this be devastating to my generation when it comes to their future economically and reaching milestones like buying a house and cars and getting married, having kids, it's bad for Republicans politically. I mean, look at Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, these socialist Democrats. They're going out there and they're talking about how bad this is for the middle class, which is mostly young people and their families. And so going out and saying, look, the Republicans gave a 15% tax break to these evil corporations making billions and billions of dollars, but they took away your student loan deductions. It's not good either way.
And that, evil may be a little strong, but some of those corporations are not in sync at all with the Republican values or conservative values at all. But here's my question.
That's their talking point.
To some extent, they're not far off from a conservative perspective. A lot of these corporations are deeply hostile to traditional understanding of conservatism, for sure. But isn't it kind of beyond dispute that one of the reasons young people, or the poorest group of Americans, aren't getting married, aren't buying vehicles, aren't buying homes, aren't launching out of their own parents' homes in a lot of cases, is the weight of student loan debt?
That's exactly it. I mean, 30% of millennials have had to move back in with their parents because they simply cannot afford it. Right now, about 50% of current college graduates are working in a job that requires a high school diploma or less, and about 300,000 are working for minimum wage. They can't afford to pay these back, and they won't be able to if any of this continues, especially getting rid of the deduction. And, talking about how bad it is and how bad millennials want out of student loan debt, a third of them have said they would sell an organ to pay off their student loans.
So maybe has it occurred to anyone that maybe one of the reasons young people are so radical politically, and that's bad news for America, is because their economic future has been thwarted in part by these loans. Like, this is causing social turmoil.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, we definitely need higher education reform in this country ASAP. And that includes dealing how student loans are given out, qualifications for them, et cetera. And so when you look at that and you look at how bad the recession was for millennials and how they haven't really been able to recover, and how the notion that that was all brought about by Republicans and ideals and conservative values and capitalism, you get this equation. I mean, right now, you know, the new poll out of the Communist Memorial Fund found that 44% of millennials would rather live in a socialist society than a capitalist one.
It's,
so we have a lot
it's
to
terrifying,
go on
and
PR.
this is one of the reasons why I think. Sal, thank you for bringing this to our attention.
And we can't leave it out. Thank you, Tucker.
Good to see you. Hillary Clinton has a lot of accomplishments that would include returning slavery to Libya. We'll tell you how that happened next. Six years ago, U.S. intervention under the Clinton administration, Obama administration rather, helped topple Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi from power. As Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton helped push for that intervention. And then this happened.
That is the land of unconfirmed reports.
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
Did it have anything to do with your visit?
No, oh, I'm sure it did.
Here she is bragging about toppling the government of Libya. Pretty fun diversion for the Secretary of State. She bragged about it for years after, but actual Libyans didn't find it as amusing. They've been suffering ever since. In the vacuum created by Gaddafi's fall, an ancient institution, in fact, has been revived: slavery. Glenn Reynolds is a law professor at the University of Tennessee. He recently wrote about this, and he joins us tonight. Glenn, thank you for coming on. This is one of those stories where we just couldn't let it go. You know, you see these politicians make decisions, particularly foreign policy decisions. They declare victory, and no one checks to see what the aftermath is like. You did. Tell us what the effect of this decision was on the people of that country.
Well, it's been a debacle, of course. It goes back to 2003 when we made an agreement with Muammar Gaddafi, the strongman who ran Libya, that if he would give up his weapons of mass destruction, we wouldn't try to overturn him. And we didn't keep that promise. In 2011, Hillary Clinton, together with Susan Rice and Samantha Power and the Obama administration, decided to kick him out of power. They bombed and got rid of him, and as you can see, sort of gloated after he was killed by a mob. And there wasn't much of a plan on what to do next, other than some advice Hillary's advisor Sidney Blumenthal gave her about how to fit this into her presidential campaign plans. And now Libya's torn up with civil war. You've got fighting militias. You had a wave of refugees passing through Libya. A lot of them got stuck in Libya, and now some of them are being sold essentially as slaves in slave markets to work on farms and that sort of thing there. And CNN covered that, BBC covered that, and it became a story last week. And I saw it, and I thought, you know, this is a real mess.